So the big question is this: how are commercial real estate brokers like us, who didn't take on debt to start their own brokerage, who are stuck in the hamster wheel of day-to-day selling, how do we sell real estate and build our businesses in a way that lets us develop rockstar teammates and create enough leverage to back away from day-to-day selling? How do we get our services, ideas, and insights out into the world and yet still create passive wealth? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to the Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets Podcast. Welcome to the Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets Podcast, where we believe most commercial real estate brokers and luxury realtors struggle with clarifying their passive income options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven brokerage strategy such as eXp commercial model and or purchasing investment real estate is the best way for you to grow your wealth. I'm your host, Brett Swarts. Each episode, I am joined by some of the best commercial real estate brokers, agents, and luxury realtors and passive income wealth advisors in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex brokerage strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He is a expert real estate agent out of the Bay Area, and actually originally kind of where I'm from, Mission, San Jose, Fremont. He kind of covers all of that area and more, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story, his background, and share some of the best secrets that he uses to grow his business. Please welcome to the show with me, Spencer. And Spencer, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, so I'm going to let you do that.
So Spencer Sue, the H is silent. But Brett, thanks for having me on. I look forward to share my story, and hopefully it's insightful for your audience.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So would you give us just a little bit about your backstory and your current focus?
Absolutely. So I am born and raised here in the Bay Area. So I'm very fortunate to be here. I do travel the world at least once or twice a year. This year is a little bit different, unfortunately. So I will have that backlogged, and I'll double up whenever we can go travel. But my previous background, I used to work in tech. I was a software sales manager for over a decade. I got to sell and work with all the great companies along the West Coast. And I got into real estate initially as an investor myself. I got in initially by flipping a few houses here in the Bay Area. But as I went through that journey, I got to learn a lot more about the business itself. And I also got to meet a lot of people and felt I had quite a bit of knowledge and a lot of insights, and a majority of people just didn't, regardless if they were 10 years in the business. And so I knew I had a pretty good angle to stand out and do very well in this industry. So that's how I got started. And to give you an idea, just in terms of production, first year was last year, did about 9.5 million, which is about 8 transactions. And this year, so far year to date, has been phenomenal at 40 million. And so it's been fantastic, and ultimately just continuing to scale up the business at this time.
That is amazing. And I want to dive into your success and the way you've been able to scale, especially taking it from the 9 to 10 to the 40. But in the meantime, I'm really curious to get to know you a little bit better and help our audience as well. I want to take a step back. So I want to go back even before the tech software days. I want to go back maybe to the high school days, right? Maybe the college days. I believe we've all been given certain gifts, Spencer, and these gifts are given to us as a way to be a blessing and help other people. So some people call them superpowers. I think they're God-given gifts. But I'm curious, maybe what were the 1 or 2 gifts that you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help people today?
I think several things. Like when you think about a salesperson today, you may think of somebody that's on a microphone or somebody that's just talking a lot. And actually, one of the gifts I have is the ability to listen. I don't talk very much outside of, in this case, I'm talking to explain myself from a podcast perspective. But usually when I work with clients, I just listen. I ask different questions to open up their mind. I'm pretty candid when it comes to these things as well. So if I feel like they're kind of going off track, or if they just have the wrong, data sets in their head, I will correct them. So on one end, I'm very transparent when it comes to showing you and showing clients the actual data itself, so that we can come to an alignment, or at least they know the data. At the same time, I just listen, right? Everybody has their own story, whether they want to buy now, sell now, do that in 1 to 5 years later. It doesn't really matter. I'll be around, but I do have a really good ability to listen and pretty much just take detailed notes. So that way it'll be a continuation from that current conversation. So I think those two aspects, and then outside of just working a lot and being very disciplined, has also done very well. I wasn't as disciplined when I was in high school and college per se, but I've also lost a lot of deals for not being disciplined. So I learned the hard way, and hence I just continue to improve those skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think the entrepreneur and like the realtor and commercial real estate broker by nature are tend to be maybe they weren't as disciplined in certain areas of their life at different times. More so, I think for me, I know my experience was if it wasn't something I was really interested in, I wasn't very motivated, right? But if it was something that I actually liked or was interested in, then I'm like, oh, I want to be the best at it. I'm really competitive and I love it and I dive into it. So that's really unique. So listening as well as, being transparent, showing the data, being blunt when you need to be blunt, right? And being willing to, like, kind of in a sense what you say, kind of like walk away from deals, like say, hey, maybe now it's not a good time to sell, but in a few years, or when someone overlists the property and doesn't perform, hey, I'd love the opportunity to help you out, right? Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. So, okay, great. Now let's dive into some of the transition that you had from tech to real estate professional, and why did you make the move? And then we'll dive into some of the best kept secrets that you have to grow your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I made the move mainly because I was at different smaller companies. I was never at a big company. So I never worked at like a Facebook, Google, these kind of big companies. I've always worked at startups. And the thing was, there was a lot of empty promises when I joined these especially younger companies. And so there were several reasons why I just eventually needed to make that switch just for good away from that industry. It was fun and all. I mean, make no mistake, I got to travel a lot. I got paid well. I made good money in that industry. However, there's just so many things out of my control, especially as a salesperson in the tech company. As you can imagine, you're only as good as your product per se. And so I was selling products because my job is to sell, but many times the products didn't work. So it made me look very bad, especially when these individuals and these managers are trusting me with a very important decision, ultimately career defining decisions as well, in terms of bolstering their careers or even a potential demotion. So I would have to gain the trust of these people, yet have very little control of the product itself because I'm not an engineer, nor do I can control the development efforts. So that was very frustrating, right? I mean, the worst feeling I have is like I work so hard, gain the trust of them, and then the product doesn't do what it was supposed to do. And it wasn't even over pitching. It was just core things just didn't go well. So it was very frustrating. So I knew I needed to, kind of get out of that space. I wanted a career and an ability to control my own destiny. And real estate happened to be one, especially since I did some of the real estate transactions on the side while I was working initially.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really insightful. And so then transitioning to real estate and the entrepreneur side of you, and then the sales side of you, right? And then the data side of you. I think it's a really unique combination there, right? I guess maybe to have both of those things makes it even more with the rapid pace of technology and the way things are moving, right? So let's dive into maybe the best secrets that you have right now. What are you doing that you feel, especially as it pertains to scaling, what have you done to feel like you've really taken such a big leap? I think you said 9 or 10 million the first year to 40 million this year. What's been the best kept secret that you're doing that's really working?
I think the biggest thing is the aspect of being on top of things, right? So the discipline aspect. So what I've done very well is, I have my CRM, my database, and I continue to stay on top of it as much as I can. Now, to get to this stage at 40 million has been incredible. And my goal is next year to get to 80 million, which is about, let's say, 60 families help. So I definitely need assistance in that case to get to that level, not just from a people perspective, but from a time perspective, right? So, being disciplined and being on top of things has been very, very beneficial and has been a giant key to the success, but also adding more and more people into the database, whether it's through events, whether it's through social media, whether it's through referrals, whether it's just a random person that I may meet on the street. It's continuing to add that every day. So it gets bigger and bigger. And so what am I doing now to then get to that next level is to automate the things that can be automated, right? The fun part of tech and the fun part of the business is you want to try to scale the unscalable, right? And so some of them is going to be very manual, but at least having the right reminders and to know when to reach out to somebody that you need to reach out to, right? Or there are other people that maybe are further down the road, so you may not want to spend the same amount of time as you would want to spend with somebody that is just mentally ready. So that kind of segmentation is very important, because at the end of the day, we both have the same amount of days or same amount of hours in a day, and we choose to do it however we want, right? You can work 18 hours a day if you wanted to, but still, it's still a finite time, and so you have to be really careful, and you have to plan it in a way where you're giving the right attention to the right people, right? Because the last thing at the same time is there are other people that may be ready that you may, because you misallocated that time, that you didn't help that person, and you may actually have lost the deal. So there's also the opportunity cost that is actually quite big when you do things the wrong way.
So making sure you spend the right time with the right people at the right time, right? And the
Exactly.
right amount of time, given their level of motivation or even where their mindset's at or their ability to actually perform, right? Such as a down payment or their actual, money's available for the down payment or their credit score, or they're in that place where they're actually ready to perform. Fair summary?
Exactly.
Excellent. So now let's talk about you, Spencer. So if someone's saying, "Hey, I like Spencer. I think I want to hire him," or I'm competing. What's the value pitch where you're saying, "Hey, here's the value of my representation, right? Here's the value of my service. Here's my market knowledge. Here's my marketing." How do you separate yourself from the competition?
So ultimately, it depends on which side I'm on, right? So as the buy side and the sell side, because the strategy is always very different for both. On the buy side, it's fundamentally my goal as a buyer's agent, which I've helped a lot of people for, especially this year, is to buy it at the lowest price possible. At the same time, not risking or losing that opportunity. That's one aspect. The other aspect is ensuring that we're as protected, or as much information as you possibly can, is the kind of the 1B, the other objective. So how do I do that? I mean, at the end of the day, I personally leverage data and insights as to what is actually going on with the market, what is the actual competition for this specific house, what is the strategy. So every single house will have its own strategy. Just because the market is competitive doesn't mean anything, because at the end of the day, not all homes are going to be the same dynamics, right? So that's a big aspect of that. I do, in terms of how I keep people informed, I do weekly content on my YouTube channel and on my podcast, which has been fantastic for myself and for my clients and even people within my network to understand and learn more about the market. They can actually see the data themselves. So I do a market report every Friday. People can actually see and pull it up, right? It's very transparent. You see the data, you see the trends. There's nothing to argue about. It is what it is. And I break it down by single family, break it down by county, break it down by condos, townhomes. And so you yourself will know what is actually happening, because it's being extracted from the back end system. So that's the value add, and it's the competitive edge when it comes to the buy side. On the sell side, if you think about it, most people that are selling, they may be selling because they want to do a trade up. They may be selling because they're moving out of the area altogether. There's various reasons for people to want to sell a home. And so what is my value prop? At the end of the day, if you think about who is the next person that will be buying that house, you would want somebody like myself that's heavily ingrained in the tech community on your side, because at the end of the day, it's going to be very, very likely, especially in nicer areas per se, that there are these tech professionals. And so the ability to market to them, the ability to think about what they may like and what they want is very, very important. At the end of the day, the goal on the sell side is to get as much visibility as possible. So the right marketing approach is very important. And the right way to position the house is also very important. And at the end of the day, your goal is to get as many people in as you can, get as many people interested, get as many offers, and have them compete with one another. So that's the fundamental strategy when it comes to the sell side. So for me to be able to organize it, the ability to create this strong kind of want for that house are the reasons why I've been always able to sell houses at record low times, but also for way more than was expected.
Beautiful. Yeah, very well said. So much there. I want to touch on the scaling part now and touch on building the team, right? And how you are building your team and aligning it in a way where, when I was at Marcus Millichap, I remember I felt like I was training my competition. Like someone would come in, I would coach them, I would train them, I'd give away all my secrets, and I liked it because I liked them and I wanted to when they succeed. But then financially, they're only incentivized to be with me for a couple deals, and then they're off on their own. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh no, we're all, it's friendly competition, but it's still competition. But so talk about how you've structured and you're structuring your business to make it financially incentivizing to keep team members around.
So a lot of that actually has to fundamentally you have to look at the root cause and why would people leave, right? Why would they leave the model? And a lot of it has to do with finances, right? I mean, if you think about it, like a split initially may be unattractive. I mean, people may want to do things on their own. And so that's very important to understand that model and who makes the money in that company. That's extremely important. So I joined eXp Realty as an example sometime in late last year for that reason. I'm not very big. I'm still not very big on the recruiting side. However, as people see my success, they want to be part of my mastermind. They want to be part of this group. Then great. I love to have them on. I love to help them. And quite frankly, it's financially aligned with me too. Like I would make money just like when you make money. If you don't make money, I don't make money, right? Yet it's not a cut from you. So that's very important to understand. I'm not taking a fee from that person. It's just because the fundamental business is very different and is positioned differently. If you think other models, whether it's like a KW, Intero, Century 21, whatever, their model is very different, right? They have people that own that office. So at the end of the day, those are the people making the money for new agents. And then they claim they may have some sort of quasi profit sharing, which is really, really broken down and fed. There's just so many layers. So technically your profits can be extremely low versus eXp because it's lean on, there's no office. At the end of the day, I'm kind of running my mini office. Then there's just a lot more money to give around, to give. And so that has a very important aspect of the ability to have people under you because like I said, I'm not taking anything from them. It's actually, we're both in the same alignment to do well. We both make money. So I think that's the most important aspect. Now, in terms of how I'm growing the business, I'm not hiring buyer's agents at this time yet. I may do that maybe next year. Right now, I do have showing assistant partners that I work with. So I will basically pay them an hourly amount. I'll do some sort of split if they end up buying that kind of, buying a house that they've shown. And so that's a model that that I have today that I will continue to increase, especially if I get so busy that I can't be in so many places at the same time. In terms of growing the team of buyer's agents, it's more of this recruiting model per se, where they can join my group. I can provide the guidance. And then maybe down the road, that's kind of how I do my trials too. I've seen a lot of people, that's how they did their trials, where you join first a group, see how you like to work with one another. You can partner on deals, and then maybe it makes sense. You can join the actual team, but it's all going to be case by case. I only want superstars if I were to work on it, but I also have to think about how do I add values to these superstars. So it's a very, very tricky case by case situation, because at the end of the day, it's still my time. Back to what we spoke about in the beginning, like I can either train this person and hopefully they do well, and then that way it works better for the group, or I just find more clients myself, right? So yeah, I have to figure out on my end what's more worthwhile.
Absolutely. And I think as so well said when you bring up the point of, being financially aligned and as well as the model being aligned, right? Where whoever the owner is of whatever entities is typically making the most, right? And so if you can kind of have like mini office or mini ownership with the eXp model, then you get to share that. It's not a cut from them. It's just a sharing of the overall revenue. So which is really neat for the company. So neat. What's the biggest mistake, Spencer? Maybe that you've ever made while being a real estate professional, or what's the one thing you wish you would have done sooner?
I think there's several things I would say when I look back. I think number one, when it comes to time, I have been very hesitant. I mean, I've only hired an assistant recently, right? And it was long overdue. And so should have done that much earlier. Clearly had the funds to do it, but I just didn't have the mental thoughts to do it. I have VAs. I've always had people like doing small things, but not like a full-time paid assistant, especially, I've never owned a business before, well, at this scale per se. And so the aspect of now having payroll and things like that is just completely new, right? So I think that should have and could have been done much earlier. That's number one. And then that could have allowed me to have more time to do other things. So that's number one. Number two, I would say not being on top of things as early on. So what I mean by that is like letting my network, everyone know that I do real estate and I'm the realtor that they want to work with. I think there's always an aspect of people just being kind of shy, like, hey, look, I don't really want to tell or push my friends that I'm in the business. They just think I'm some sort of just used car salesman or something. And you can't imagine how many opportunities lost. And they literally just wrote, I didn't know you were doing this, right? Even though you think you've blasted out every day. Like the reality is, like, if you think about social media, I mean, I think what are the numbers? Because let's say I have 5,000 connections on Facebook, and let's say, I don't know, 200 or something can see it just because there's so much activity happening, right? It's all an algorithm. I mean, you think about percentage wise, it's such a low percent that sees a post that you may feel is the best post you've ever made. And so you don't know. And also I'd say, no, you don't know who gets it, right? It's not everyone will get that feed. And so it's very important to manually reach out to every single person and consistently remind them, but also add value however you can about what is actually happening in the business. So if I did that earlier, would have done even better than I am doing today, right? But then again, it's never too late because the database keeps growing. But for any newer agent or anyone that feels like kind of stuck, everybody has a very big gold mine in their database. You don't have to find a new shiny object or new ads. You just need to reconnect with those people, add value, and you'll find some success pretty quickly.
Beautiful. Love it. You ready for the lightning round?
Sure.
All right. If you could go back to your 25-year-old self, and Spencer, I don't know how old you are, so maybe your 20-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget that you would make sure that you would do?
I would say the golden nugget at that age. I am much older than that, so appreciate that comment. But when it comes to at 25, I would say is, like I said about the kind of the database aspect, whether you're using the database as a business tool per se, or you're using it just to stay in touch with people, the aspect of adding people to this database should be done at any age, even if you're in college right now, right? If you think about college, that's a fantastic opportunity to meet a lot of people. And the thing is, though, over time, people will forget about each other, right? And so you have to be, because you can't assume someone else is going to be on top of things. You need to be on top of things. And so you need to create this database or this list yourself, not from a sales perspective, but just to keep in touch, maybe even write some notes of what you guys talked about. So that way, when you talk again, you're almost continuing that conversation and it continues to grow that relationship rather than restarting from scratch, which is almost as if you never had a conversation to begin with. And so that would be the advice, because this is a compounding effect. It grows the list, the database, but also deepens those conversations and those relationships. So I think that's very critical.
Absolutely. So much wisdom there. Best real estate decision you ever made?
The best real estate decision, I would say, I'm going to have to tie with two. You know what? I'm going to say this. A big part of the success, and this is not real estate per se, but it's certainly a big shout out, is when I got a Tesla, when I got a Model 3. And it's not because it's a nice car, which it is. It's because of the autopilot capability, right? Like electric actually is not a big benefit from that lens, but it's really the autopilot capability. And why is that important? The autopilot capability doesn't mean you're distracted from driving, but it gives you a different feeling when you drive, right? You're a little bit more relaxed, especially if you're sitting in rush, like in the past with traffic, you're just in a different mood, right? When it's rush hour traffic and you have autopilot because you're going like 5 miles per hour on the highway, it's much more relaxing than if you're just like sitting in front, just like staring and just that becomes exhausting. So that, interesting enough, has made the mentality of driving distances very different. So that would be a very good decision, and it was a big catalyst for sure.
That's a great story, and really cool. That should be a commercial for Tesla, Spencer. You can get on there.
I got a referral code if anyone needs it.
Yeah, seriously, look them up. Okay, worst real estate decision you've ever made?
Worst real estate decision ever made. I think I brought it up previously, but it'd be, I would say it's more missed opportunities. Like a lot of it is, I can count all the successes and the revenue brought in and things like that, but it's a lot that's been missed. Like I know that they bought houses. There's at least this year, $10 million worth, right? So it's just a combination of being on top of things, like making sure they don't slip, like ensuring that there's systems and processes of that very, very early on. So that does not happen, or at least it may happen, but at least you minimize the chances of those happening, that event happening, because of the lack of reach out. So I would say that would be the mistake, is not having that system much earlier.
Excellent. Best negotiating strategy?
Best negotiation strategy. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always trying to figure out the motivations of why somebody is trying to sell. That's one aspect, but also you want to educate people. What I find something kind of interesting is when somebody's working with a really good realtor, it actually kind of works both ways, in the sense of, if they're a really good realtor, they're also probably pretty influential with that client of theirs, of convincing them to take a deal, right? So you want to use that to your advantage. I've seen a lot of top realtors, because they're so busy. I mean, the last thing they want is, oh wow, you can't come to an agreement because of $10,000, and now I need to have this, I may lose this deal, or I need to sit another few weeks showing this house. In reality, they were like, all right, this is a really good deal, let's go take it. So, but you needed to know the motivation and the capability. You need to know do your homework beforehand to be able to play that card. So I would say that.
Yeah, well said. Number one book you've gifted or recommended the most in the past year?
Number one book. I don't read too many books per se. I'm a bigger fan of podcasts.
Could be the number one podcast that you've recommended or you like a lot.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like real estate ones. So for example, even Tom Ferry has Tom Ferry is a very big coach, but I think his podcast is actually very, very good. There's a lot of things that you can actually implement just from listening to it. I've heard a lot of great people on, shout out to Real Estate Marketing Dude. They have a lot of great content as well with some top producers. So I have a lot of my learnings through that per se than actual books. just given I can listen to those while I drive.
Excellent. And this is the last question, and it kind of wraps up everything. So Spencer, after all your success and all your growth and all the people you've helped in real estate, how do you stay centered in your values, and how do you stay encouraged to reach for new goals?
You have to, so I look at several things. I mean, the beauty of this is that you're growing your own business. And so that's extremely exciting, is extremely tiring as well. It just depends on your framework. So you have to understand your own body, and you have to understand where you're at mentally. If you feel overworked, just relax, right? Take either a day off, take some hours off, go do something that's unrelated to the profession. You can work as much or as little as you want. It's really up to you. And so it's very important to understand this is a marathon. Like, you can't force people to buy a house right now, right? But if you have a large enough database, you don't have to force anybody to do anything. Just a pure numbers game. There will be bounds of people that will be wanting to buy and sell right now, but you need to have those numbers. But you also need to be able to last to that time for them to be able to buy and sell. So you need to keep your sanity. You need to keep your health. You need to take care of the core relationships, right? Like, I have an incredibly supportive wife. She's on top of things. She helps me as well with the business. I have to make sure that it's all a juggling act, right? Obviously, I'm very busy, but you have to make sure that that's well taken care of. The home base needs to be taken care of. And so those would be the tips. As think about it. It's all a long-term. Think from a long-term perspective. This is a marathon. While it's great to have, some fast success, note that this is just the beginning of the journey. And then you have to take care of yourself, both mentally and from a health-wise.
Beautiful. Very well said. And for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, Spencer, what's the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so several different ways, right? If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can just look me up, Spencer HSU Bay Area Realtor. Just follow me or DM me and connect with me. If you want to tune into my YouTube channel, just type in Spencer Sue on YouTube. You will find me right away. And you can just Google my name. I'm not too hard to find. And so if you ever have any specific questions, or if you're looking at a change from a brokerage perspective, happy to talk about kind of what your options are, why I made the move, and see if it's the right fit for you.
Beautiful. Love it. Well, thanks, Spencer, for being on the show and sharing part of your story. A ton of wisdom, and we're all better for it as real estate professionals. So I want to encourage you to keep using the gifts you've been given to bless others, and those listening skills, right? And being transparent and just helping people, right? I think that's fantastic. And with that, I also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets podcast, where we believe most commercial real estate brokers, luxury realtors, they struggle with clarifying their passive income options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, but finding a model that works for you, for your business, for your team, and for ways to serve your clients is the best way for you to grow your wealth. You can learn more about that at expertcresecrets.com and learn a little more about the eXp commercial model as well. And connect with Spencer or I at any point in your career. We'd love to help you out. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening, and have a great day. You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets podcast with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it valuable. Visit expertcresecrets.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. That's expertcresecrets.com. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.